It's okay now? It does? Sounds weird to me. There's that like a scratchy throat sound.
Yeah.
What is it?
Because there are two mics.
This is the best of all the mics.
Okay.
No, there's one more thing.
So that's not a mic. That's recording.
So that's the same thing. I think I don't think so. So that's the mic and that's the
Okay, are there some cocktails? Oh, we're going through the microphone. Leave it. Thank you. Right. Are there some kind that don't have this curled lip?
Yeah. No. Everything has a lip.
Oh,
Shape, everything.
because for me, these are clunky. Divine grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada, Ki Jai. This Conviviti Founder Acharya, His Divine Grace, our loving Master Srila Prabhupada, Ki Jai. Vedanta Koti Vinashinavindha Ki Jai. Namacharya, Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Sikosa Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Srila Advaita Srila Radha Harshila, Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Guru Gopinath Sundar Radha Kundi Guru Nam Ki Jai. Shrimati Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Vrindamani Ki Jai. Shri Ganga Yamuna Saraswati Ki Jai. Shri Mathura Dham Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Puri Lakshmi Kshetra Ki Jai. Shri Mathura Dham Shri Navadvip Dham Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Shri High Holy Name Mahamantra Yuga Dharma Ki Jai. Lord Jesus Christ, Ki Jai. Lord Jesus Christ, Ki Jai. Lord Jesus Christ, Ki Jai. Ramadeva Bhaktivinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the Lord Sri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Definitely, they look very much dressed for Easter. Formerly, I don't know if there's dress codes anywhere now, but formerly it used to be like when in my younger life, different. Like when you went to school, you dressed in a certain way, and definitely Sunday when you go to church, if you went to church, and most people did that, they would dress in a certain way, you know. And then for special holidays, you dress even more so, you know. So. Not to bar and wearing yellow, which is quite often associated with Easter, yellow, pink, blue. They are looking quite befitting for the occasion. So I wanted to speak today, and I'm going to have to apologize because somehow or other, on the way over here, I was looking through my notes, I had taken throughout the week. I've been really thinking about this day and reading different aspects of what led up to the Easter, which is the resurrection of the rising of Christ. And I had taken notes, and yesterday I kind of got them all in order. I didn't have time to read them all in order, so I can do that on the way over today because we're not going to be driving. And somewhere along the line, you know how the computers, or at least the Mac, they get these little spinning things, and you can't move anything. So I had to do a hard shutdown, and when it opened up, everything was gone, and I could not find any of it. It was like gone. And I'm just hoping I can remember some of it as best I can. Because I wanted to give some here's historical narration of this day. I feel that we're living in a predominantly Christian country. We should have some idea how this, what are their holidays? Who are the people besides Christ that they're worshiping? And what is the significance of Christ working, etc. And especially on this, we know Christmas, that was his birthday, but this is less understood by most people because of Easter. And Easter is the culmination, well, this partial culmination of a whole list of events, starting with Lent, about 40 days ago. And in one way, you could say Lent is a little bit, there's some light comparison to, like, say, Kartik. Here's a period of time, and during that time, it's intended to really intensify your connection with the Lord. And in doing so, people take vows to give up certain things. They observe prayer, fasting, giving in charity, and abstinence. And so during this, it's a 40-day period. And so some of them, you got like maybe somebody will give up eating chocolate or something more, or something more significant they will give up for those 40 days. And these 40 days are representing a time that Lord Christ went out into what they describe as the wilderness, which was following his baptism. So he was baptized by John the Baptist, John the Baptist, because you'll find a lot of names duplicated in the Bible. Now, disclaimer here, I am not a knowledgeable former Christian. My family didn't do the church thing. I did the church thing myself because I want to know what was going on and get answers to questions that they didn't answer. So Christians send me Prabhupada instead, But I'm not any type of theologian or someone who deeply studied Christianity. So I have taken mostly from speaking to devotees who are former, they still consider themselves Christians. They don't just flip off Christ because they become a devotee. So from their experiences and some a little bit of reading. So in this, he got baptized, and this type of baptism, there were different types of baptism, and this baptism was like a full immersion. That's what sets the Baptists apart from other Protestant sects. They'll maybe sprinkle a little water on your head. The Baptists dunk you. It's not, like taking out of the river and dip you in. Now they have kind of like, sometimes they have kind of like big tubs or something. But the idea is, in order to be fully baptized, you have to be fully submerged. So he had that time. And of course, we see, because here he is Jesus, known as the Enlightened One. The Son of God, not God, but the Son of God, endowed with all the qualities, but as we can understand, not the quantification. So right after that baptism is when he actually began his ministry. He began widely preaching. And there are some ancient texts where it is alluded, revealed actually, that Jesus spent 17 years in the Orient, from the ages of 13 to 29. And during this time, it's widely accepted by many, not everybody, because like in everything, there's it's just the same premise. Okay, we all accept Christ, but I see it this way, you see it that way. And we have this even in our own temples, to speak of the whole Gaudiya Vaishnava, but different understanding. But from 13 to 29, he traveled to India, Nepal, Ladakh, and Tibet. And in these places, he traveled both as a student and as a teacher. So, and there are some missile books that allude to him being in Jagannath Puri. So, I mean, we don't have that kind of recording in our history, or that we have yet to come across, but it is accepted by many. And where he was baptized was in the countryside of the Roman Judea near the river Jordan. And you could say, okay, son of God, obviously he was sinless. He came to this world as a man, but not as a conditioned soul. And so it could be wondered what was the need for him to be baptized. But he was baptized in order to gain salvation in the celestial kingdom of God. In other words, to return fully with God at the time his mission ended. And also, and more importantly, was setting the example for all men. We have the same thing. Krishna went to Balaram, they went to Sandipani school. And Lord Chaitanya, he also had his own school, but he had, he was studied. So we see that there's threads you can see when there is people who are like, Jesus is Shaktavesh avatar. This is accepted because he was sent by his father, God, Krishna, to do a specific service, a specific duty, and therefore he was empowered for that, empowered by the Lord. It's not like someday he woke up and thought, maybe I can save, so many people are suffering, maybe I can save the world. He was sent here for that purpose by the Lord. And as such, he didn't come here forced by conditioning. So he set the perfect example. So this Holy Week, it's the week, we're at the end of it now. The first year is the Lent. And then this Holy Week happened. And that's began last Sunday, the week immediately before Easter. And it's quite often called Palm Sunday. And I don't know about the churches around here, but it's quite common that on the Palm Sunday they will get palm fronds, the leaves of palm trees, or maybe just a part of the frond. The leaf goes up and there's all these outstanding little. But they will have these in their hand, each person going to the church. I'll explain a little bit more of that after. So on the Palm Sunday, another interesting thing too. So during this period of the Lent, which ends in the Palm Sunday, so there is some, as I mentioned, some austerities to be done, and some fasting, do prepare prayers, etc. But way back, centuries, way back, before things became formalized, and they were much more severe in their practices and penances. So when they fasted, it meant they didn't eat at all. Sort of like a nirjal. Maybe they could take water, but it was a serious fast. And then it got to the point, okay, well, at least you won't eat any flesh, no meat, on certain, for the days. And then only Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, Good Friday, Saturday, and Easter, that would be an absolute fast. But then that became a little more relaxed. And also, whatever they ate on Friday was, even in my time, no meat. The Catholics, they didn't eat any meat. They didn't. The fish and the eggs part wasn't part of the picture, but no flesh. That was definite. But that, through the years, has become relaxed. It's easier to give in to it's easier to give in to lowering the bar than trying to help people keep the bar and keep the standard, So through the years, I don't remember all the dates, but it goes right up into the 60s and the 70s something. There's been like relaxation of the standards to the point now that mostly is not happening. Some people, older people can remember. They may do some, follow some of this. But the Palm Sunday is it's still kind of on one level or another. It's observed. One of the other things was during this period of the Holy Week and the week, maybe a little before, it's almost a 2-week period. 7 days preceding and 7 days following. Yeah, so the Holy Week, which is ending now, and then there's this whole new week that's coming up starting today onward. So 14 days total. One of the things was that, in addition to whatever fasting was going on, many businesses were closed. And during the week, that was during maybe Sunday, Saturday, but during the week, any courts of law were also closed from these days. I was thinking that maybe, I don't know how good that was for the regular public, but the criminals must have really liked it because they couldn't get locked up during those days. But all actions of law would cease. The court doors would actually be closed. So then this Palm Sunday occurs, and what is it about? It's not an allegory. It's a fact that it commemorates the triumphal entry into Jerusalem by Jesus. And this is marked in the Bible. There's 4 main books that they're like the canonical gospel. These are the accounts by the main leading disciples. So not that they're always in sync, but on major points they are they concur. Some slight details may be there because, like, if I'm looking from over there, what I see may not be what you see over there, but we are observing the same occurrence. So, just like we do Guru Shastra, right? Guru Shastra, they have these points. They're canonical gospels that they go by, and they all describe pretty much the same. That the Lord entered Jerusalem with like these large crowds. And oh my God, is that my phone? I'm sorry, that is my phone telling me it's Gayatri time. And it's right behind, it's in a little basket there. And just shut it up. I'm so sorry. Gayatri later today. It's embarrassing. So he came with his disciples, and he's going to re-enter Jerusalem. And it's actually an extremely picturesque thing, and it's also, if you actually understand what is about to happen, it's heartbreaking. because when he made that decision to enter into Jerusalem for the final time, he was accepting the inevitability of inevitable death. He understood what was going to happen. He tried to convey it to his disciples, but they didn't have the ability to comprehend. And you know how it is sometimes when probably some of you have theories, like sometimes you just, oh my God, you get to the star in the eye guru thing, and then he says something, you just blink your eyes and you don't say, wait a minute, what does this mean? It goes over your head. I mean, we did that. That's why there's a couple of verses in the purports in our books that if we'd said, Prabhupada, what did you mean by that? They might not be there. They might be there, but expressed in the way he intended, and because the language came out another way. And so it's always good for disciples to listen, and if they don't understand something, get it clarified. So they didn't do that. And it was actually saying that they were like maybe they might have been afraid to even ask them, but the fear being probably because then they would have to understand the truth and they didn't want to hear that. It was kind of like a yoga maya. They were getting covered over. So he goes in there, and he came in. He entered on a colt. He was a young foal of a donkey. He didn't ride in on white horses. He didn't come in on an elephant. And he told them, bring me. He stopped outside, short of entering, and bring me a colt. It's never been ridden on. So they went, some of the disciples they found a young donkey tied up by, I guess, next to the mother. They started to untie, and I guess the owner came out, what's going on here? And they explained, they said, so the two went, the mother and the baby donkey. And then the disciples were placing their cloaks on the colt for Jesus to ride. And apparently in one of the books, Zechariah, in the Bible, it's prophecy. Before this happened, this prophecy was there. And rejoice greatly, shout aloud, daughter of Zion, daughter of Jerusalem, behold, your king is coming to you, humble and mounted on a colt, the foal of a donkey. And say it is, Hosanna, Hosanna, Hosanna in the highest. It's an explanation and exaltation. So it was quite a, for the time, it was quite a big deal. People were, because there was a undercurrent of political rivalry between the Romans, who had the control and the power, and they were very much against and afraid of Christ. And then there was now we have this whole woke culture, everything was looking different than we thought it was. But there was a culture of wokeness going on as to who was Christ. Suddenly this person who was a carpenter, they knew he was a carpenter, and suddenly he's taking on this other persona. And those persons who were clued in, who weren't resisting the message that was coming from him, were seeing things in a whole different way. And so there was this kind of tensions in a way. The whole city was stirred up. Some were really he's come, he's come. And who is this? Who is this? Who's come? This is the prophet Jesus from Nazareth in Galilee. People were really excited. As we would say at ISKCON, they were fired up. Definitely fired up. But again, the disciples did not understand the significance of this triumphal entry. And then when Jesus started to become glorified, they remembered some of the things that had been written about him and that had been done to him. But still, they didn't understand when Jesus set his face to go to Israel, he had set his face to die. They still could not grasp that. He tried to prepare them as they were setting out from Galilee. He tried to prepare them. The Son of Man, this is in one of the verses, that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and scribes. So that was alluding to the Roman control. And so the Son of Man must suffer many things, be rejected by the elders, chief priests, scribes, and be killed, and on the third day be raised. And then, so this is from Luke, one of the books of the Bible. And then he told them, let these words sink into your ears, because you can understand the word. Getting it? Let these words sink into your ears. For the Son of Man is to be delivered into the hands of men. So that was just there, if you understood the nuances. Here we have the Son of the Lord. He describes himself as the Son of Man. He's about to be delivered into the hands of men. In other words, he was not an ordinary person. And he was going to be given over, his fate decided by ordinary persons. So he's telling that. And then he's like saying, I don't understand this saying. You know, he could understand, they didn't understand. So following this, preceding this, the Palm Sunday, then it was Monday was like kind of like a day of, because that had been so intense. Okay, there was like a day of nothing much happened on the Monday, and then it was Tuesday. He went to this other place. I can't remember the name. But he went to another place, and on Wednesday was sometimes called a spy Wednesday. So what is that about? So there was one disciple, and that disciple was not, it was marked. Jesus understood that this disciple was going to betray him. In other words, he was a spy in the mountain like this. And he didn't do anything to stop it. So then on the Thursday, so it's this past Thursday, it's often called Monday, like M-A-U-N-D, Monday, Thursday. This Monday is like a commandment, it's like a commandment. So what happened on that day is that it was the institution of the Last Supper, and he gave, so this is like the commandment part, he gave one of his last commandments, and this was that he was telling them to love each other as I have loved you, something to that effect. And it was like one of the last commandments he had given. And then he washed their feet of the disciples. Sometimes the modern popes would do that and get like very poor people and go wash their feet. It's a nice thing. So after that, which is called the Last Supper, and that's pretty much described in all four of the main Gospels. During that supper, he mentioned, one of you will betray me. Just like, he didn't like say it with great pomp and ceremony, one of you will betray me. So it was saying some of the disciples even started, I hope it's not me. I mean, you feel that way. But who would it be? I mean, you can imagine their eyes kind of looking, trying not to look, but looking. And by the way, it was a very simple supper. It was bread and wine. You know, they weren't drunkards. It's not that. You know, the wine was used in sacrament. You know, so they were guzzling wine to forget about stuff. And during that last dinner, that's when the idea, what's it called when you come to the church? You get communion. So the bread and wine, the bread was indicating the body of Christ, and the wine which is made in communion for those who are, in some places you can have communion whether or not you've actually been baptized in the church or not. In some places only people are baptized. And in the Catholic Church, if you've committed what they consider a mortal sin, you can't be baptized. They have some standards and principles. So then after that, he said, you know, one of you will betray me. And he told Judas, don't go do what you have to do. And Judas went. He was the one who ultimately betrayed. And then Christ went into this garden, which I cannot pronounce the name. Get some. Yeah, I wasn't sure if that get some or get some. Get some. Get some. So the E at the end is. So he's there. He's in, you know, in a prayerful mood, but really he's waiting. And eventually, as it would happen, then he sees this line of torches coming because dear Judas had cut a deal with the corrupt priests of the Romans to betray Christ for 30 pieces of silver. Interestingly enough, he never enjoyed that silver. He ultimately felt, whether it was real remorse or just fear, but he threw it. It was picked up by the priest, but then they realized this is blood money, and they still had enough wherewithal to realize that no good would come of this. So the money was used to buy this plot of land, which became known as a potter's field, or it's a large area which was used as a cemetery for people that were from outside the region that may have been, you know, ended up passing there. So they had to have a place to bury them. So we also had that concept, potter's field. It's a place where somebody unknown died, you can't find a relative, or there is just the person has no means, the family has no means, so they go to the potter's field. You know, to this day, they exist. I don't know where it is in Columbus, but I'm sure there will be one, some place where they can, you know, take care of people for the last time. So, so when they go in, they enter, he's on the donkey, they're waving his pom-poms, and then following this celebration, like within the same point, he begins, which is called the journey with the cross. You often see pictures of Christ either hung on the cross or holding the cross, one way or the other. So it's a very he goes before the cleric, and he's condemned to death by corrupt, not due process of law. And it was kind of interesting because there was some conflict going on. Like actually, the main person, Pilate, he knew that Jesus Christ was an innocent person, but he's the one that has to deliver the verdict. So the verdict is he is found guilty. So then he has to decide what to do about it. And there was only one thing at that point that was expected, and that was death. But there was another Jesus, again, common name. So we have Jesus of Nazareth, or Galilee that we're talking about, but there was this Jesus of Nazareth. And he was at the sign. Both of them came up for verdict at the same time. So he's saying there's been a crowd of people, like almost like bloodthirsty people looking for some action. Who should I condemn? One can go free. Who should I condemn? So of course the followers of Christ were, are going in that direction, but the ones of, Bhavadars were shouting, and there was kind of a shouting contest. And somehow it appeared that Bhavadars was the one chosen. So he was set free, and Christ then takes up his cross. He gets the condemnation of death, and he starts to go to this place outside the town, because the actual procedure of nailing him to the cross was not inside, it was outside the gates of Jerusalem. So he takes up this cross, and I have found actually some interesting information about the cross, which got swallowed up somewhere. But I'll try to resurrect that information. So a person, it was in 1870. So there was this French archaeologist, and he somehow or other was able to figure out how large the cross was, the cross beams, how tall it was, and how much it weighed. And it was quite heavy. It was like 165, I think it was 165 pounds. And so he's taking this cross over his shoulder, and at one point he stumbles. So there's this called the Stations of the Cross, where you follow Christ. It was his last day on earth. This would have been Friday, this past Friday, known as Good Friday. Takes up that cross, he kind of stumbles once, then he meets his mother, and she's, can you imagine? She's in a devastating situation. But he doesn't stop and console her, he moves on. Then Simon of Cyrene was assigned to help him carry the cross. And at one point, this isn't in the Bible, but it's in some other literature. It's bound up. It's like one of these things that probably happened, but exactly how it happened. But what's more or less agreed upon by those who say it happened was this one lady named Veronica. She saw him just, sweating, and she took her veil, laid the veil, and wiped his face, and the face of Jesus later appeared on this veil. So then he's moving on, and he stumbles a second time. He gets up, and then he meets the women of Jerusalem, and they're in great despair, beating their chests, wailing in tears, and he tells them, "Don't cry for me. Cry for your sons, cry for your daughters, cry for yourselves." Of course, they don't kind of understand that inner meaning, And then he, again, third time he kind of falls. And this time it was like very difficult for him to get up. And yet he did. So many people like to assign some like interpretation or lesson, but a common lesson is, I would say in one word, determination, that he was going to finish this journey with the cross. And in spite of the difficulty, he did not get deterred. And then finally, when he gets to the place, he just rip off his clothes. Whatever cloth he had was like ripped off. Sometimes the station of the cross is called Division of the Robes. People were already like, vultures. I want a piece, I want a piece, they were thinking like that. And then he's like, it's just horrible. He's beat up, beat up. This is like before the super race, and especially around the face, and they're beating him up horribly. Until finally was put on that cross with these nails into his hands, into his feet, and started going to his heel. And the cross itself, 9 feet, 42, what I could understand, 9 feet tall. No, bigger than that. But he was 6 to 9 feet off the ground, when he was hanging on that cross. And just the final act of barbarianism, they made this like a crown, so-called, with very pointed, sharp thorns. And they didn't just sit it on his head, it was pushed into this skull. And then he's taken up. So now, the Jewish tradition has that the body, when you die, the day, you have to be before sunset, the body has to be interred. So he's on that cross. Sometimes the people on the cross are just left to bake in the sun, or the vultures will come and have a feast, or sometimes some animals can get up, they're taken off and thrown on the street, animals come. So one of his disciples, Joseph, another Joseph, not his father, had even been working with the Roman government, and he had an awakening. So he's in this awkward position that here's my Lord and Master, and I'm still part of this government. But he became very unshy, and he managed to get the permission from Pilatus to take the body. And with it, moving the body from the cross, it would have to have taken at least 3 people. So, because of the complexity of doing that, so that was accomplished, and they found a tomb. Now the tomb was not something made; it was made, but it was carved in a solid rock. So it wasn't like a regular cave. There was no back entrance. And so this person, he had gotten some new linen, and another one, and again, this is why my notes wouldn't help, because I names them out of my mind, but he brought incense and myrrh, frankincense and myrrh, some other spices to put on the body, or at least in a bag that would be going in with the body at that time. So he was put in this tomb, and a large stone was placed in the front. Heavy stone, not something, And they had been really careful. The Romans were really freaked out by Jesus, because he had already performed what have been attributed to it. At least 37 miracles are recorded in the Bible of different degrees. So he had already assured them they couldn't really kill him. And they just wanted to really make sure he was really dead. So, along with all the torture, after he had left his body, apparently, the last one of the Roman soldiers took this big sword and just gashed it into the side by the heart to push it through the heart. So it emptied all, the blood came out of the body. So he's dead. Nothing. This man can't do anything else. But still, they had some feelings about the powers of Christ. He was not an ordinary person. So they put this big rock there, super heavy, just to ensure, in case, that he would be able to get removed. And there were 2 women, Mary Magdalene and his mother, the Holy Mary, who Prabhupada compared with Radharani. And they were along with this Joseph and two others, they were witness to this. And this was considered important because according to the ancient maybe current Judaic laws and principles, women, they would have surprised you, by the way, were not given a lot of credence like women. So the voice of a woman would not be given much consideration, even if she was allowed to use her voice. But in this case, there being there, these two women, it was recorded in the different places, was significant because they were actually, it meant that what they said actually happened. That it wasn't some dream. They actually witnessed him going into the cave, the tomb being closed. And then Mary comes, his mother comes. So this is on Saturday, on Friday. Saturdays, and it's Friday before any sun rising on Saturday, so it was definitely Friday. And then all day on Saturday he's there. She goes on Sunday, and she sees the rock is removed from this place. And there's some brief conversation. There's an angel of God that had come and removed that rock. And then she turns, and there's the Lord, her son. But she's so in a heightened state of exaltation, but she doesn't recognize it right away. No, and of course, so many things have happened that his physical state is probably greatly altered at that point. But she was the first person to see, and then Mary Magdalene, and then these other three persons, and then ultimately there was, crowds of people, at least 500 people who saw him. So it wasn't like they might not have seen him exit, but they saw him. And then, so this is today, Easter Sunday, the resurrection, that he's risen from the dead. Sometimes, Christ, you see even I saw some little yard signs, Christ has risen today. So this is what has happened. And then after that, for another 40 days, so 40 days to Lent, when he was in the wilderness after being baptized, after being initiated, another 40 days. And during that time, he repeatedly appeared to his disciples and gave instructions. And not only the disciples, but other people, when this would happen, could see them. At one time, there was a crowd of apparently 500 people. They could see him. Just like when Krishna chose to give teachings to Arjuna on the battlefield, only Krishna could see, Arjuna could see what was going on. But in this case, after the resurrection, he was visible. And he just went on for about 40 days in different places, teaching his disciples. And then at one point, on the 40th day, right in front of their very eyes, he was suddenly taken up. It was like they saw some kind of a cloud, and suddenly that cloud completely covered him. And that was the last, this is in the book of Acts. So, quite an extraordinary saga, and there's so many incredible, one of the better words, adventures, but great adventures in a spiritual sense, really high level adventures. Like when they took him from the cross, they put him on this big, huge slab, and that slab is still in Jerusalem. I've seen that. I went there, and when I saw, I see how the people who are lovers of Christ, they go there, they have a piece of cloth, and they're touching that slab, and just like we may do ourselves through certain, sacred relics, sacred items, and and then they take it and they fold it very carefully. They're going to take it back. I forgot. So I was mentioning on Wednesday, Spy Wednesday. It's also mostly known as Ash Wednesday, and you see people with these little, like we do our fire yoga, and put the little. Well, every year they'll take the fronds from in the church that are in the palm fronds, and they keep it, and then they burn it the next year, and then that is what they use on the ashes before. So this close with a question and answer from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. So the question is that Jesus Christ is Jagat Guru. He's the spiritual master of the whole world. Prabhupada said he wants his disciples to be Christ-like because he had great admiration for the Lord Christ. So his instructions alone are sufficient for our spiritual welfare. Is it still necessary then to accept a Mahanta Guru, a great spiritual acharya, in other words, a Guru, one who teaches by example, who is still living in this world? This is the question. A living Guru is sometimes expressed. So here was the answer. And this was published in the Rays of the Harmony. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, we accept both Jagat Guru and Mahanta Guru. If only the Jagat Guru Vada, Jagat Guruism, is accepted, the result has undesirable consequences. If you accept some great soul from the past, in this case Jesus Christ, as Jagat Guru, you want to follow in his footsteps in the present, and you think there's no need for a Mahanta or a living Guru, it's questionable to what extent one will actually be able to follow the views of Christ. Because you're a conditioned soul, okay, you may be, let's say you're a realized person. You and I both hear the same shloka, but what the realized person is hearing from the shloka is not the same as an ordinary person at this point. So that's the problem. You can take Jesus, what you should do, take Jesus, but without a guru on behalf of Jesus to help you understand what he has been teaching, how he's been teaching, what he's heard Jesus, there's great probability of misunderstanding and just kind of drifting away. So therefore, it's questionable to what extent he'll be able to properly follow the views of Christ. So then he concludes that only the succession of Mahanta Gurus mercifully delivers us to the world of the Supreme Lord, or the Jagat Guru Acharya. And he said that if the teachings preached by Christ 2,000 years ago are not carried forward by Guru Parampara into the present time, if his message is only going to be coming through the books and recorded instructions, then there is the possibility that one will mistakenly accept distortions of truth preached by him, or even accept views that are opposite to his own. Srila Prabhupada warned us in July of '67 that if even one person were to come and change one word of what I've taught you, the whole thing will be lost. So the parampara system is very basic, very intrinsic, and even for any spiritual lineage, it's something that you may have your ancient books. We have our ancient books, but we need the Guru in the present, and that Guru, of course, must be qualified. So the Mahant Guru, he's a manifestation of Jagat Guru, but he is not the Jagat Guru. He's receiving the teachings through the disciplic succession, and then by his mercy, he is delivering to us. You know? And such a person would not deceive us by not presenting the real truth, just to please us. He doesn't wish anything worldly from us. He's simply the unbiased deliverer of the truth. So that is qualification of the Mahant Guru, who's giving us mercy through the disciplic succession. Okay. Anyways, I thank you for listening, and I got a little discombobulated, but I hope a little bit of understanding of the significance of this day here. Interestingly enough, the Easter celebration this year has been impacted by economics. Usually in Easter, you see all these colors, they have this thing, it's not a Christian thing, but it got connected with Easter. Easter egg hunts, Easter egg, they dye Easter eggs and put them in the tree. But apparently there is this economic thing where eggs have become astronomically expensive. So that was good. I was noticing it. I didn't see any, usually see these eggs hanging from the tree, colorful eggs and what have you. So the wonderful thing about our practice is there's no finances involved in chanting Hare Krishna. Maybe, can we have them down in prayer? Yeah.